Aiden Ross stood at the edge of the abandoned highway, staring at the flickering lights of a distant radio tower. His breath was shallow, heart pounding as the wind whispered through the overgrown trees. He hadn't heard a human voice in 3 weeks, until today. The voice had crackled through the static of a forgotten emergency radio, to any survivors. Shelter, safe zone, transmit location. The message repeated twice, and then the line went dead. But it was enough. For Aiden, hope had returned. The world had unraveled in less than 6 months. A strange sickness had swept across cities, turning people into mindless, hostile beings. No one knew if it was a virus, a parasite, or something worse. All Aiden knew was that it had taken his parents, his friends, and nearly every town he'd ever passed through. The infected didn't speak. They didn't sleep. And they never stopped moving. He tightened the straps on his backpack and adjusted the worn map tucked under his arm. The radio signal had come from a town called Clearwater, at least 60 miles west of his current location. Aiden didn't have a car, a bike, or anyone to back him up, just his legs, his instincts, and the desperate will to keep breathing. He stepped off the cracked pavement and into the forest trail that cut through the hills. His boots crunched on dry leaves. Every sound made him freeze. A bird's call. A rustle in the bushes. The wind. It could be anything. For 3 miles, he saw no sign of life. Or unlife. But at the bend near an old ranger station, the trees suddenly went silent. The birds stopped singing. Aiden's breath caught. He crouched, slowly peeking over a moss-covered boulder. His eyes widened. 4 figures stood near the ruins of the station. Their movements were unnatural, jerky and confused. Their clothes were torn and dirty, and their skin looked pale, even under the evening light. They sniffed the air like animals searching for prey. Aiden ducked back. His mind raced. He hadn't seen the infected this close in days. If they caught his scent. He crept backward, slowly placing each step. But the forest floor betrayed him, a brittle twig snapped under his boot. All 4 heads snapped toward him. "Run," he whispered to himself. Then he sprinted. Branches lashed at his face. Roots threatened to trip him with every step. Behind him came a guttural screech, followed by crashing footsteps. The infected were fast. Faster than they should have been. Faster than he remembered. He couldn't afford to look back. His lungs burned. His legs screamed for rest. But stopping meant death, or worse. After 10 brutal minutes, Aiden broke out of the forest and stumbled into the ruins of a deserted campsite. Broken cabins, collapsed tents, and rusting picnic tables filled the clearing. He ducked into the nearest structure, an old equipment shed. Slamming the door behind him, he pressed his back against the wood and held his breath. Thud. Something slammed into the door. A hand scraped at the metal latch. Another screech rang out, angrier this time. Then another thud. And another. The door wouldn't hold forever. His eyes scanned the dark shed. A rusted tool chest. Broken shovels. A moldy sleeping bag. Then he saw it, an old ATV, partially hidden under a tarp. Dusty, but intact. Hope flared again. He moved quickly, yanking off the tarp. The key was still in the ignition. It didn't guarantee the engine would work, but it was worth trying. He reached into his pack and pulled out the small solar battery he'd scavenged weeks ago. With shaking hands, he connected it to the bike. Outside, the banging grew louder. The infected were furious. Desperate. He turned the key. The engine sputtered. He turned it again. A roar echoed through the shed. The engine came to life. The infected screamed in response. Aiden yanked open the door, revved the engine, and shot out into the clearing. The creatures chased after him, their pale forms flickering in the shadows of the trees. But this time, Aiden had the speed. He didn't look back. Just gunned the ATV toward the road, adrenaline carrying him faster than fear ever could. The radio signal still echoed in his mind. Clearwater. 60 miles. A chance at something more than just survival. A place where people still lived, still fought, still believed they could take back what was lost. But first, he had to get there. And the Horde would not make it easy. The roar of the ATV's engine tore through the stillness of the forest as Aiden sped toward the cracked highway. Every muscle in his body was tense, every nerve alert. He knew the infected would keep chasing, relentless as the shadows they haunted. As the ATV burst onto the highway, the moon hung low and silver, casting long, eerie shapes across the broken asphalt. The world felt fragile here, abandoned cars half swallowed by weeds, street signs bent and faded, remnants of a life that no longer existed. Aiden glanced in his rearview mirror, the dim glow revealing the ragged figures trailing behind him. They moved with staggering speed, driven by hunger and something more unknowable, a blind instinct that pushed them forward no matter the obstacles. He punched the throttle, the ATV jolting forward over potholes and cracked pavement. His heart hammered in his chest. If he could just put distance between himself and the Horde, maybe he could make it to Clearwater before dawn. But the hours ahead were uncertain, and danger lurked in every shadow. Suddenly, the engine sputtered. "No, no, no," Aiden muttered, pressing the throttle harder. The machine coughed once, twice, then died. The infected behind him closed the gap with terrifying speed. His pulse screamed. He threw the ATV off the road and skidded onto the gravel shoulder. Scrambling off, he grabbed his backpack and ran toward a broken-down pickup truck parked near the roadside, its windows shattered, tires flat, and rust swallowing the metal. Desperation filled him. If the ATV was dead, he needed another way. The infected burst into the clearing. 4 of them surged forward, their faces a grotesque blur in the darkness. Aiden's breath caught. He darted behind the truck and scrambled into the driver's seat, heart pounding in his ears. The keys lay on the dashboard. He didn't know how long they had been there, but it was his only chance. He turned the key. The engine groaned and coughed, but then roared to life. Aiden slammed the door shut and slammed his foot on the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning on the gravel. Behind him, the infected howled in frustration. He didn't look back again. The highway stretched ahead like a dark ribbon, winding through forests and abandoned towns. The road was littered with debris, fallen streetlights, abandoned belongings, overturned shopping carts. Each obstacle was a potential trap, but Aiden's focus was razor-sharp. At one point, a group of infected blocked the highway, their pale forms silhouetted against the faint glow of a distant fire. Aiden swerved sharply, tires screeching, narrowly avoiding the mass. His mind raced, calculating every move. Every second mattered. He remembered the radio signal, the promise of a safe zone in Clearwater. But how many others had heard it? How many survivors were already fighting to reach the same place? And if the infected were growing faster, stronger, how long before even that refuge was lost? As the night deepened, exhaustion clawed at him, but he forced his eyes open. The road curved sharply around a hillside, and as Aiden rounded it, headlights flashed ahead. A convoy of vehicles, trucks, cars, even a battered bus, lined the road. Figures darted between them, moving with purpose. Aiden's heart lifted. Maybe this was the survivor group broadcasting the radio signal. He slowed the truck, pulling up beside the group. A man in a dark jacket waved him over urgently. "Over here," the man shouted. "You're not alone." Aiden killed the engine and stepped out, muscles trembling but hope burning inside. As he approached, he noticed the tension etched into every face, worn, weary, but alive. "We heard your call," Aiden said, voice rough but steady. "I'm heading to Clearwater." The man nodded. "Good. You're just in time. We're moving out soon. The infected have been pushing harder all night. We can't stay here." Aiden glanced at the dark horizon, where twisted shapes moved like specters. "How far?" "About 30 miles to the next checkpoint. Then another 25 after that. If we make it." The words hung heavy in the air. The survivor group leader, a woman with steel-gray eyes and a scar across her cheek, stepped forward. "Name's Mara. We've been trying to keep people alive, helping anyone who can still fight. But the infected, they're adapting. Smarter. Faster. We're running out of time." Aiden swallowed hard. His journey was only beginning, and the challenges were already mounting. "We'll need everyone ready," Mara continued. "No mistakes. No hesitations." The group quickly moved to load supplies into the vehicles. Aiden pitched in, grateful to be among others who understood the stakes. As the convoy rumbled forward, the night air was thick with tension. Every sound, a distant scream, a broken branch snapping, the low moan of the wind, set nerves on edge. Aiden's thoughts flickered to his family, lost to the sickness. To the lonely nights and empty days spent dodging death. And to the faint but unyielding hope that somewhere ahead, in Clearwater, survival was still possible. The race against the Horde had truly begun. The convoy rumbled along the cracked highway, headlights cutting through the thick darkness. Aiden sat beside Mara in the battered pickup, his fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel. The radio was quiet now, save for static and the heavy weight of unspoken fears. The air smelled of damp earth and fading smoke, remnants of fires long since extinguished. The trees lining the road seemed to lean in, shadows stretching like claws, watching their every move. Minutes passed like hours. "We're almost at the first checkpoint," Mara said quietly, eyes scanning the road ahead. "If we make it." Aiden swallowed hard. Every mile was a gamble, one wrong turn, one moment's hesitation, and the infected could swarm them. Ahead, the road narrowed. A barricade made of abandoned cars and scrap metal loomed, guarded by survivors with rifles and makeshift weapons. They nodded at the convoy as it approached, signaling it was safe to proceed. Aiden's heart lifted, finally, a moment of safety. The convoy slowed and stopped behind the barricade. Mara stepped out, briefing the guards quickly. The survivors exchanged tense words before motioning for the group to move through. As they passed the checkpoint, Aiden's eyes caught something unsettling, a shadow moving just beyond the barricade, too slow, too deliberate to be human. He froze, heart pounding. Mara noticed. "Stay alert," she warned. The convoy moved on, the sense of unease lingering. Hours later, they stopped at a clearing to rest. Fires were lit, and the survivors huddled close, sharing sparse rations and quiet stories. Aiden sat near the edge, staring into the flames. Mara approached and sat beside him. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm trying to process it all," he admitted. "This world, it's not like anything I imagined." Mara nodded. "It's harder than most. But we have to keep moving. The infected aren't just out there anymore, they're adapting. They hunt smarter, move faster." Aiden's stomach twisted. "How do we fight that?" "We survive," Mara said simply. "And we protect those who can't protect themselves." Suddenly, a distant howl shattered the night. The group tensed, grabbing weapons. Aiden's breath caught. "That's close," Mara said, rising. "We need to move." The convoy packed up swiftly, the fire dying to embers. As they set off again, the road stretched endlessly into the unknown. The convoy's headlights pierced the thick fog that clung low to the ground as they neared the river crossing. The bridge ahead was cracked and rusted, its metal bones groaning softly in the cold night air. Aiden's hands tightened on the steering wheel, every instinct screaming that danger was close. Mara rode shotgun, scanning the dark tree line with sharp eyes. "This spot's risky," she murmured. "If the infected catch us here, we're trapped." The survivors fell silent, the hum of the engines blending with the distant croaks and groans that echoed like ghosts. The river beneath the bridge flowed sluggishly, swallowing the moon's reflection in dark waves. As they reached the entrance, a sudden shout from the rearguard snapped everyone to attention. "Ambush!" a voice yelled. Aiden slammed the brakes. The convoy screeched to a halt, tires spinning on gravel. From the shadows, figures burst forward, infected, their faces twisted in hunger, their movements jerky but fast. The survivors leapt into action. Rifles cracked in the night, sharp reports that echoed through the trees. Mara grabbed a shotgun from the back of the truck, firing methodically at the charging undead. The survivors formed a tight circle, back to back, fighting desperately to hold the line. Aiden grabbed his own weapon, a crowbar he'd scavenged earlier, and swung at the nearest infected who lunged toward the truck. The sickening thud of the impact barely masked the growl behind him as more creatures closed in. The bridge groaned ominously, the old metal threatening to give way under the weight of chaos. Suddenly, a loud crack rang out, the bridge shuddered violently. A section of rusted railing snapped, plunging one of the infected into the river below with a splash. But the distraction was brief. More infected surged from the forest, their moans rising in a terrifying chorus. Aiden fought with grim determination, swinging his crowbar again and again. Blood, dark and thick, splattered his arms, but he refused to stop. Mara's voice cut through the noise. "Fall back to the trucks. We can't hold here." The survivors scrambled back, forming a defensive perimeter around the vehicles. Engines roared to life once more. Aiden jumped into the driver's seat of the lead truck as Mara climbed into the passenger side. "Hold on," she warned. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning over broken concrete and debris. Behind them, the infected howled in frustration, pounding the ground and walls with relentless fury. The convoy surged across the fragile bridge, the metal creaking under their weight. As the last vehicle made it safely to the other side, the bridge gave a final, wrenching groan before a section collapsed behind them, plunging into the dark water below. Breathing heavily, the survivors exchanged relieved glances. They had survived, but only barely. "We can't afford to stop for long," Mara said, her voice low but steady. "They're going to regroup and keep coming." Aiden wiped the sweat and grime from his brow, eyes scanning the horizon. The river crossing was just one of many obstacles ahead, and the horde was growing bolder. The race against time was far from over. After the brutal river crossing, the convoy pressed onward, the early dawn faintly tinting the horizon with streaks of pale pink and orange. The survivors rode in tense silence, every sound amplified in the stillness of the morning. Aiden scanned the map Mara had pulled from an old backpack, a crumpled piece of paper marked with the next checkpoint, an abandoned town called Ashwood, just a few miles ahead. The hope was that there might be supplies and, hopefully, fewer infected. As the convoy approached the outskirts of Ashwood, an unsettling quiet blanketed the streets. No birds sang, no wind whispered through the cracked windows. It was as if the town was holding its breath. The vehicles slowed, engines humming softly. Mara raised a hand to signal a stop. "Everyone out," she ordered, her voice low but firm. "We'll scout on foot before moving through." Aiden climbed down from the truck, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. His eyes darted to the storefronts, once lively places now shattered and empty. Broken signs hung by one hinge, faded posters peeling from walls. The group spread out cautiously, rifles raised and ready. The tension was palpable, every shadow a potential threat. Aiden's heart pounded in his chest as he moved toward a small grocery store, its windows dark and coated with grime. He kicked the door open carefully, peering inside. Empty. The shelves were bare, except for a few cans rusted beyond use. No supplies. No survivors. A hollow ache settled in Aiden's chest. The town was a ghost, swallowed whole by the apocalypse. Suddenly, a faint sound caught his attention, a soft tapping, like footsteps. He spun around, weapon raised. From the alley beside the store, a young girl stumbled into view. Dirty and pale, her clothes torn, eyes wide with fear. Aiden lowered his weapon slowly. "Hey, it's okay. We're survivors." The girl froze, then took a cautious step forward. "Help, please," she whispered. Mara arrived, her face softening as she saw the girl. "What's your name?" "Lila," the girl replied, voice trembling. "I got separated, from my family." Mara nodded. "We'll keep you safe. But we need to move quickly. The infected could be nearby." As they guided Lila toward the trucks, a sudden noise shattered the fragile calm. A window smashed nearby. Infected. From every direction, pale figures emerged, drawn by the sound, hungry and relentless. The survivors raised their weapons, opening fire. The air filled with gunfire and screams, the peaceful morning turning into chaos. Aiden fought beside Mara, their backs pressed together as they took down the relentless attackers. The horde seemed endless, but the survivors held firm. When the last infected fell, silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Breathing hard, Aiden looked at Lila, her small frame trembling but alive. "We need to keep moving," Mara said. "Ashwood's not safe. But we can't leave her behind." The convoy prepared to leave the silent town behind, hope mingling with the ever-present danger. The race against the horde continued, and the road ahead was more uncertain than ever. "Let me know when you want part 6. The convoy pushed onward, leaving the ghostly town of Ashwood behind, the weight of recent battles heavy on everyone's shoulders. Lila sat quietly between Mara and Aiden, her small hands clutching a worn teddy bear, a fragile remnant of a life lost. The morning sun rose higher, casting sharp light across the desolate landscape. Miles of empty fields stretched on either side of the road, broken only by twisted remnants of fences and abandoned vehicles. Despite the bleak surroundings, a strange sense of hope lingered in the air. Mara adjusted her pack and scanned the horizon. "We're getting close to the safe zone," she said, voice tight but determined. "The last checkpoint before the city." Aiden nodded, the thought of safety both thrilling and terrifying. They'd come so far, fought so hard, but the worst was still ahead. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, a voice breaking through the static. "This is Station Echo. Coordinates for the safe zone are confirmed. Expect heavy infected presence, but defenses are holding." Mara's eyes narrowed. "That means we have to move fast and stay sharp. The horde will be waiting." The convoy slowed as they neared an old gas station surrounded by dense woods. The survivors dismounted, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. Aiden volunteered to scout ahead with Mara. Together, they moved through the overgrown path, stepping carefully over broken branches and shattered glass. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant drip of water and their own measured breaths. Then, just as they rounded a bend, a sudden movement caught Aiden's eye. A small garden, oddly vibrant amidst the decay, green shoots pushing through cracked pavement, flowers blooming against all odds. "It's alive," Aiden whispered, awe softening his voice. Mara allowed herself a brief smile. "Even here, life finds a way." But the moment of peace shattered as a low growl echoed from the trees. Infected, emerging like ghosts from the underbrush, eyes glowing in the shadows. Aiden and Mara opened fire, the sharp reports echoing through the woods. The infected fell one by one, but more kept coming. Just when it seemed endless, a sudden flash of light cut through the gloom, a flare shot into the sky, bright and unmistakable. From the tree-line, figures appeared, armed, disciplined, and moving with purpose. "Survivors," one shouted. "This way. Follow us." Without hesitation, Mara grabbed Aiden's arm, pulling him toward the newcomers. Lila clung to Mara, her small face lighting up with cautious hope. The group rushed forward, weaving through the chaos as the flare illuminated a hidden path leading to a fortified camp. The gates slammed shut behind them, and for the first time in days, safety felt real. Inside, survivors greeted them, men and women armed and organized, tending to wounds and sharing rations. Aiden's exhaustion melted into relief. Mara turned to the camp leader, a stern woman with eyes that had seen too much. "We made it," Mara said. "But the horde won't stop. We need to prepare." The leader nodded grimly. "Then we'll fight. Together." As night fell over the camp, the flicker of hope burned bright, a fragile light in a world swallowed by darkness. But outside the walls, the horde gathered once more, waiting, hungry, relentless. The race against time was far from over. "Ready when you want part 7. The camp was a fortress amid the ruins, surrounded by high fences topped with razor wire and guarded by watchful sentries. For the first time in what felt like forever, Aiden and the others allowed themselves a moment to breathe, though none could shake the feeling that danger was just beyond the walls. Inside, survivors moved with quiet purpose, repairing barricades and rationing supplies. The camp leader, a hardened woman named Elise, gathered everyone in the central hall. Her voice was steady, carrying the weight of countless battles. "We know the horde is growing," Elise began. "They'll be back, and when they come, they won't stop until this place falls. We need every able body ready to defend." Mara clenched her fists. "How long do we have?" Elisa's eyes didn't waver. "Maybe hours. Maybe less." The survivors prepared for the inevitable. Aiden joined a group reinforcing the main gate, stacking crates and barrels to create makeshift barriers. The tension was thick, every sound amplified in the night. From his spot on the fence, Aiden looked out into the dark wilderness. The shadows seemed to move on their own, shifting and swirling as if alive. Then came the first distant groans, a low, chilling sound that grew steadily louder. The horde was coming. Lights were lit along the perimeter, torches flickering against the darkness. Survivors took their positions, weapons ready, faces set with grim determination. The ground trembled as the infected poured from the trees, dozens, then hundreds, a wave of rotting flesh and hungry eyes. Gunfire erupted, sharp and unrelenting. The survivors fought fiercely, their voices rising in battle cries and shouted orders. Aiden fired his rifle steadily, picking off the infected one by one. Nearby, Mara wielded a shotgun, blasting the closest attackers with practiced precision. But the horde was endless. More and more infected surged forward, battering the gates and walls with brutal force. The fences shook, splintering under the relentless assault. Suddenly, a section of the wall gave way. Infected spilled through the breach like a flood. Chaos exploded inside the camp. Survivors scrambled to contain the breach, fighting in close quarters, backs against walls. Aiden fought fiercely, blocking a lunging infected with the butt of his rifle before driving his knife deep into its skull. "Fall back to the inner defenses," Elise shouted, rallying the survivors to regroup. The camp's inner walls were hastily reinforced, survivors forming a desperate last stand. Breathing heavily, Aiden glanced around. Lila was safe for now, huddled behind cover with Mara. But the relentless tide pressed in. Then came a sudden explosion, the sound of dynamite set by one of the defenders. Flames erupted, lighting the battlefield in a hellish glow. The blast threw infected bodies into the air, buying precious seconds. Using the chaos, the survivors launched a fierce counterattack, driving the infected back through the breach. Hours stretched on, each moment a battle for survival. Exhaustion clawed at the survivors, but surrender was not an option. Finally, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the horde began to retreat, dragging their broken forms back into the shadows. Silence fell over the battered camp, broken only by ragged breaths and the occasional groan of the wounded. Aiden sank to the ground, his body shaking with exhaustion. Around him, survivors counted losses and tended wounds. Elise approached, her face grim but proud. "We held the line. But this is only the beginning." Mara rested a hand on Aiden's shoulder. "We can't stay here. They'll be back, and next time, it could be worse." Aiden nodded, steeling himself. The safe zone had been a brief refuge, a place to gather strength before the fight continued. Outside, beyond the walls, the horde waited, hungry, patient, unstoppable. The race against time was far from over. Let me know when you want Part 8, the thrilling conclusion. Part 8, the final stand. The sun rose blood-red over the horizon, casting long shadows on the battered camp. The survivors moved with weary urgency, knowing the horde's retreat was only temporary. The infected would return, stronger and more numerous. Aiden stood beside Mara and Elise, staring beyond the walls at the endless forest. The quiet was deceptive, the battle was far from over. Elise addressed the group. "We have one chance, to break through the horde's encirclement and reach the city. It's risky, but staying here means eventual death." Mara tightened her grip on her rifle. We need to move fast. The city might have supplies, shelter, maybe even other survivors. Lila, clutching her teddy bear, looked up at Aiden with wide, trusting eyes. Will we be safe there? Aiden forced a reassuring smile. We'll do everything we can. The survivors packed what little they had left, checking weapons and supplies. The mood was tense but determined. As the gates opened, the group stepped into the unknown, the forest ahead thick with shadows and silence. They moved swiftly, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the soft earth. Every rustle in the underbrush set nerves on edge. Suddenly, a distant roar shattered the quiet. The horde was regrouping, closing in. Faster. Mara urged, her voice urgent. Branches scraped, twigs snapped. The infected emerged, a relentless wave of decay and hunger. The survivors formed a tight line, firing as they retreated deeper into the woods. Aiden fought fiercely, his rifle steady despite shaking hands. Behind him, Mara covered their rear, blasting the infected that got too close. The path narrowed, forcing the group into a funnel where the horde could strike with deadly force. The first of the infected broke through. Aiden swung his rifle like a club, striking a zombie before it could reach him. Blood and gore splattered, but there was no time to hesitate. Lila screamed as a nearby infected lunged toward her. Mara reacted instantly, shotgun booming, the creature dropping to the ground. The survivors pressed forward, adrenaline pushing them past exhaustion. After what felt like an eternity, the trees began to thin, revealing the jagged skyline of the city ahead. Hope surged, until a massive roar echoed from behind. The horde's leader appeared, a hulking, terrifying figure, faster and smarter than the others. Its eyes burned with unnatural intelligence, driving the infected onward like a general commanding an army. Aiden locked eyes with the creature. This was the ultimate test, the final hurdle between survival and death. The horde charged, and the survivors met them head-on. Bullets flew, explosions rocked the forest, and desperate cries filled the air. In the chaos, Aiden found himself face-to-face with the monstrous leader. He fired round after round, but the creature advanced relentlessly, shrugging off hits. Summoning every ounce of strength, Aiden dodged the creature's grasp and plunged his knife deep into its neck. The beast howled, staggering back, then collapsed. With their leader fallen, the horde faltered, giving the survivors the opening they needed. They sprinted toward the city, hearts pounding, lungs burning. As they crossed into the urban ruins, the survivors realized the fight was far from over, but so was their hope. Together, battered and bloodied but unbroken, they faced the uncertain future. In a world overrun by darkness, humanity's spark still burned bright. The race against the horde was not just about outrunning death, it was about holding on to life itself. And they would fight for it, every step of the way. If you want, I can help with more stories or any other content.